the night everything changed. Natasha Reed stared at her reflection in the bathroom mirror of Harmony Bistro, adjusting the silver pendant that rested against her collarbone. Her grandmother Victoria had given it to her years ago, a small hand, signing "I love you" in sterling silver. Tonight felt important. After 3 years of avoiding the dating scene, she'd finally agreed to meet someone her colleague had set her up with. The soft fabric of her emerald dress whispered against her skin as she smoothed it down one final time. Her hearing aids, sleek and modern, caught the light. She'd stopped hiding them years ago. They were part of her story, part of who she was. Any man worth her time would understand that. But as Natasha returned to her table, watching Brett Sullivan scroll through his phone without looking up, doubt crept into her chest like cold water. He'd been 15 minutes late, offered no apology, and had barely made eye contact since sitting down. She'd tried to start conversations 3 times, only to be met with one-word answers. "So you're an architect?" Brett finally asked, still not looking up from his screen. "Yes," Natasha replied, relief flooding through her. "I specialize in accessible design, making spaces work for everyone, regardless of physical ability." Brett's eyes flicked up, landing on her hearing aids. His expression shifted, confusion, morphing into something uglier. "Wait, you're actually deaf?" The question hit like a slap. "I have profound hearing loss," Natasha explained carefully, keeping her voice steady. "I mentioned it in my profile. I use hearing aids and I'm fluent in sign language." Brett leaned back, his face twisting with disbelief. "Your profile said communication challenges. I thought you meant you were shy or something." He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "I can't believe I wasted my Friday on this. Do you know how exhausting it would be, constantly repeating myself? My friends would never let me live it down, dating someone who can't even hear properly." Natasha felt her throat tighten. She'd faced discrimination before, but something about this moment, dressed up, hopeful, vulnerable, made it cut deeper. "I graduated top of my class from Columbia," she said quietly. "I've designed buildings in 12 states. My hearing loss doesn't define my intelligence or my worth." "Look, no offense," Brett said, already reaching for his wallet, "but I have standards. You should have been honest up front instead of wasting people's time." He threw 2 20s on the table and stood up. "Good luck finding someone who's into that." As Brett walked toward the door, Natasha sat frozen, her hands gripping her water glass so tightly her knuckles went white. The tears she'd been holding back started to blur her vision. Around her, she could feel other diners stealing glances, their pity somehow worse than Brett's cruelty. Then someone moved. A man from a nearby table stood up, but he wasn't following Brett. Instead, he positioned himself directly in front of Natasha's table, blocking her view of the exit, of the staring faces. His hands rose, and he began to sign. "You are extraordinary," his hands said, movements fluid and confident. "That man is a fool who will never know what he missed." Natasha's breath caught. This stranger, this man with kind eyes and strong hands, was speaking her language. She watched, transfixed, as he continued. "My name is Dominic," he signed. "May I sit with you? No one should feel alone after experiencing such cruelty." Before Natasha could respond, a small boy appeared beside the man, tugging on his sleeve. The child had bright, curious eyes and wore hearing aids similar to hers. He signed rapidly, his small hands moving with the enthusiasm only children possess. "Daddy, is the pretty lady okay?" That mean man made her sad. Dominic knelt down to his son's level, signing back. "Oliver, would you like to meet her?" The boy nodded enthusiastically, and together they approached Natasha's table. "This is my son, Oliver," Dominic said aloud while signing simultaneously. "He wanted to make sure you were all right." Oliver stepped forward shyly. "Hi," he signed. "I'm 7. I like to draw. Are you really sad?" "Daddy says when people are mean, it's because they're scared of things that are different." A laugh bubbled up from Natasha's chest, unexpected and genuine. She wiped her eyes and signed back. "Hi, Oliver. I'm Natasha." "You're very wise for 7 years old. Can we sit with you?" Oliver asked eagerly. We were going to have dessert, but Daddy says you look like you could use some friends right now. Natasha looked at Dominic, who gave her an apologetic smile. I promise we're not trying to intrude, he said. But Oliver insisted, and honestly I couldn't let that guy's words be the last thing you heard tonight. Please, Natasha said, gesturing to the empty chairs. I'd like that. As they settled in, Grace Mitchell, the restaurant manager, appeared at their table. I saw what happened, she said, making sure to face Natasha directly. That man's behavior was completely unacceptable. Your meals tonight, all three of you, are on the house. After Grace left, Oliver immediately pulled out his sketchbook. Look, he signed, showing Natasha page after page of colorful drawings. This is a dragon, and this is our cat, Picasso, and this is Daddy trying to cook spaghetti. The last image showed a stick figure surrounded by flames, and Natasha laughed again. Your son is wonderful, she signed to Dominic. He's my world, Dominic signed back. His mother, Claire, died 4 years ago. Car accident. She was pregnant with our second child. His hands stilled for a moment. Oliver was born hearing, but progressive hearing loss started when he was 4. Learning sign language wasn't just about communication. It became our way of staying connected to each other when everything else felt like it was falling apart. Natasha's heart ached for them. I'm so sorry for your loss. Claire would have loved you, Dominic said with a sad smile. She volunteered at a school for deaf children. She always said that people who can't see past disabilities are missing out on knowing the most resilient souls on earth. They talked for hours. Natasha shared her own story, growing up deaf in a hearing family, her grandmother Victoria, who'd also been deaf and taught her that different wasn't less. Her journey through architecture school where professors doubted her abilities, the ex-boyfriend who'd left because dating her was too complicated, his loss, Dominic signed firmly. Completely, absolutely, catastrophically, his loss. Oliver had fallen asleep with his head on Dominic's shoulder by the time the restaurant began closing. We should go, Dominic said reluctantly. But, Natasha, Oliver and I have breakfast every Sunday at Riverside Cafe, 9 o'clock, best blueberry pancakes in the city. Would you join us? Natasha hesitated for only a moment. I love blueberry pancakes. As they exchanged numbers, Oliver stirred awake. Is she coming to pancakes? He signed sleepily. Yes, Natasha signed to him with a smile. Good, Oliver signed back. You make Daddy smile. He doesn't smile enough. In the parking lot, as rain began to fall softly, Natasha sat in her car and touched her grandmother's pendant. Victoria had always told her, the right person won't try to fix you. They'll love you as you are, hearing aids and all. Tonight, a stranger and his son had shown her exactly what that meant. Sunday morning arrived bright and clear. Natasha had changed her outfit 4 times, finally settling on jeans and a soft yellow sweater. When she walked into Riverside Cafe, at 9 o'clock sharp, Dominic and Oliver were already there, waving enthusiastically from a window booth. You came, Oliver signed, bouncing in his seat. Over pancakes and coffee, conversation flowed easily. Dominic was a photographer specializing in portraits. I love capturing people's genuine moments, he explained. The unguarded expressions, the real emotions. Show her, Oliver urged, and Dominic pulled out his phone, scrolling through his portfolio. Natasha was struck by the intimacy of his work, a grandmother's wrinkled hands holding a baby's fingers, a cancer survivor laughing with her head thrown back, a young couple signing their wedding vows. These are beautiful, Natasha signed. You don't just take pictures, you tell stories. That's exactly what I try to do, Dominic signed back, his eyes brightening. One breakfast became a regular Sunday tradition, then weeknight dinners were added. Then Saturday afternoons at the park, where Oliver would draw while Natasha and Dominic talked for hours. Within weeks, Natasha couldn't imagine her life without them. She taught Oliver about architecture, and they built elaborate cardboard cities together. Dominic photographed Natasha's building projects, capturing her vision in ways that helped her win new clients. The 3 of them created their own signs, a special gesture for Pancake Sunday, another for Oliver's masterpiece. and one that meant our family, that they used more and more often. 3 months after that first night, Dominic asked Natasha to attend Oliver's school art show. As they stood admiring Oliver's painting, a portrait of the three of them signing. Together, Oliver's teacher approached. "You must be so proud," she said to them. "Oliver talks about you both constantly. He told the whole class how you met, how his daddy stood up for Natasha when someone was mean to her." That night, after they'd put Oliver to bed at Dominic's house, Natasha and Dominic sat on the porch swing, signing in the darkness. "I love you," Dominic signed suddenly. "I've been wanting to tell you for weeks, but I was afraid. Afraid I was moving too fast. Afraid you might not feel the same way." Natasha's hands trembled as she signed back. "I love you too. Both of you. You've shown me what love really looks like. Not someone who tolerates my deafness, but someone who sees it as part of what makes me who I am." Their first kiss tasted like hope and new beginnings. Building forever. 6 months later, Natasha had practically moved into Dominic's townhouse. Her toothbrush sat next to his in the bathroom. Her coffee mug had its own spot in the cabinet. Oliver had started calling her Tasha Mom, a name that made her heart swell every time he signed it. But with growing closeness came deeper conversations. One evening, after Oliver was asleep, Dominic told Natasha about Claire's death in detail, how he'd been at a photography exhibit when the police called, how he'd arrived at the hospital to find both his wife and unborn daughter gone, how Oliver had stopped speaking for 3 months, communicating only through drawings. "When Oliver started losing his hearing a year later, I felt like I was losing him too," Dominic signed, tears streaming down his face. "Like God was taking away another piece of my family. But then I learned sign language, and suddenly we had this secret world again. Just the two of us. It saved us both." Natasha held him as he cried, understanding that letting her into their world meant trusting her with their deepest wounds. She shared her own pain, the years of feeling broken, the family members who'd urged her to get cochlear implants to be normal, the loneliness of growing up in silence while the world moved in sound around her. "My grandmother Victoria was the only one who understood," Natasha signed. "She'd take me to deaf community events, introduce me to deaf artists, musicians, athletes. She taught me that I wasn't broken. I was just part of a different culture. When she died 2 years ago, I felt like I'd lost my only advocate." "You have advocates now," Dominic signed. "Oliver and I will spend the rest of our lives making sure you know your worth." Their relationship deepened in other ways too. Dominic started attending Natasha's business meetings, photographing her architectural models and helping her create presentations. Natasha joined Dominic at Oliver's school events, learning the names of all his friends, helping with homework. One Saturday, at Oliver's soccer game, another parent approached Natasha. "I've been meaning to ask. My daughter was diagnosed with hearing loss last month. We're all learning sign language, but it's overwhelming. Do you have any advice?" By the end of the conversation, Natasha had exchanged numbers with 4 other families navigating hearing loss. That evening, she mentioned it to Dominic. "We should start a support group," he said immediately. "There are so many families who feel alone in this journey. We could help them." The first meeting of the Riverside Deaf Family Network brought 8 families to Dominic's living room. Within 3 months, they had over 40 regular attendees. They organized sign language classes, shared resources, created a community where no one had to face hearing loss alone. Natasha found herself becoming a mentor to newly deaf adults and children. She'd show them her architectural designs, proving that deafness didn't limit career possibilities. She'd share her story about Brett, about how his rejection had led her to Dominic and Oliver, showing them that the right people would love them completely. 1 year after their first meeting at Harmony Bistro, Dominic made a reservation at the same restaurant. Natasha assumed it was a sentimental anniversary dinner, but when they arrived, the private dining room was filled with everyone they loved: family, friends, members of their support group. Grace Mitchell, the manager, smiled knowingly from the doorway. Oliver stood in the center of the room, holding a sign that read, "Tasha, will you be my mom forever?" Dominic knelt down, pulling out a ring. His hands shook as he signed. Natasha. Reed, you walked into our lives when I thought our family was complete. But you showed me we were wrong. You didn't fill a void. You expanded our capacity for love. You've taught Oliver that his differences are strengths. You've taught me that the deepest conversations happen in silence. Will you marry me? Through happy tears, Natasha signed back. Yes, 1,000 times yes. The room erupted in silent applause, hands waving in the air, the deaf community's way of celebrating. Oliver ran to her, and she scooped him up, holding him tight while Dominic slipped the ring on her finger. Their wedding 6 months later was unlike anything their guests had ever seen. Every word was both spoken and signed. The ceremony took place in a botanical garden, surrounded by flowers and natural beauty. Oliver walked Natasha down the aisle, signing, "You look like a princess the whole way." When they reached Dominic, Oliver signed to both of them. "Now we're really family. Forever and forever." Dominic's vows made everyone cry. "Natasha, you saved me on a night when I thought I was just helping a stranger. You showed me that love doesn't need sound to be heard. You've given Oliver a mother who sees his deafness not as a limitation but as a beautiful part of who he is. I promise to love you with my hands, my heart, and every part of my soul." Natasha's vows were equally moving. "Dominic, Oliver, you saw worth in me when I couldn't see it in myself. You taught me that family isn't about perfection. It's about choosing each other every day, exactly as we are. You speak my language, not just in signs, but in acceptance, understanding, and unconditional love. I promise to be your partner, your advocate, and Oliver's mother for the rest of my life." During the reception, one of Natasha's former professors approached her. "I owe you an apology," he said through an interpreter. "When you were my student, I doubted whether you could succeed as an architect. I was wrong. You've not only succeeded, you've revolutionized accessible design. Thank you for proving me wrong." That moment felt like a full circle. 2 years later, Natasha and Dominic stood in their new home, a house she'd designed herself with universal accessibility features. Oliver, now 11, had his own art studio. They'd added a daughter, Emma, born deaf, whom they were teaching sign language from birth. The Riverside Deaf Family Network had grown to over 200 families. They'd started a scholarship fund for deaf students pursuing higher education. Dominic's photography project documenting deaf families had been featured in national magazines. But the most meaningful moment came one evening when Oliver approached them with a school assignment. "Write about a hero." He read his essay aloud and signed simultaneously. "My hero is my mom, Tasha, not because she overcame being deaf, but because she taught me that being deaf isn't something to overcome. It's part of who I am. She showed me that different doesn't mean less. She showed my dad that it's okay to love again, and she shows every family in our support group that they're not alone. She's my hero because she turned the worst night of her life into the beginning of our family." Natasha couldn't hold back tears. Dominic wrapped his arms around both her and Oliver. That night, after the children were asleep, Natasha and Dominic sat on their porch, signing under the stars. "Do you ever think about that night?" Dominic signed. "What if I hadn't stood up? What if you'd just gone home?" Natasha smiled. "I think we would have found each other eventually. Love like this, it finds a way. But I'm grateful it happened the way it did. Brett's cruelty led me to you. His rejection opened the door to acceptance. Sometimes the worst moments create space for the best things to bloom. You know what Oliver told me last week?" Dominic signed. "He said he's glad he's deaf, because if he wasn't, he might not have the same connection with you. He sees his hearing loss as the thing that brought you into our lives." "That's beautiful," Natasha signed back, "and heartbreaking and hopeful all at once." Their story had spread throughout the community and beyond. The local news did a feature on their support group. Harmony Bistro put up a small plaque at the table where they'd met, where love spoke louder than words. Families from across the country reached out, seeking advice, community, hope. Natasha started a blog sharing her experiences, and it became a resource for thousands of deaf individuals navigating relationships, careers, and self-acceptance. But at the heart of everything was their family, proof that love transcends all barriers, that the right people see differences as beautiful rather than broken, and that sometimes the person who stands up for you when the world sits down becomes your entire world. 5 years after that rainy night at Harmony Bistro, Natasha received an email from Brett. The subject line read, "Long overdue apology." She almost deleted it, but curiosity won. The message was brief. "I've been in therapy working on my biases and prejudices. What I said to you that night was cruel and ignorant. You deserved better then, and I hope you found it. I'm sorry." Natasha showed it to Dominic that evening. "What do you think?" she signed. "I think," Dominic signed back, "that growth is possible for everyone, but more importantly, I'm grateful for his ignorance. If he'd been kind that night, you might have given him a second chance. His cruelty led you straight to us." Natasha smiled and deleted the email. Some apologies are too little, too late, and some rejections are blessings in disguise. That weekend, at their usual Sunday pancake breakfast, now including 12-year-old Oliver, 4-year-old Emma, and Natasha, newly pregnant with their third child, Oliver asked a question that had clearly been on his mind. "Mom, do you ever wish things had been different? That you weren't deaf?" Natasha looked at her family, at Dominic, whose hands had first spoken love to her in a moment of pain, at Oliver, who'd taught her that shared experience creates unbreakable bonds, at Emma, signing more pancakes enthusiastically, at the life growing inside her. "Never," she signed. "Not for a single moment. Being deaf brought me to you. It taught me strength I didn't know I had. It showed me who my real advocates are. Would I change the pain I experienced? Yes. But would I change who I am? Absolutely not. I'm perfectly unique, and so are both of you." Oliver smiled, satisfied with the answer. "Good. Because we like you exactly the way you are." As they finished breakfast, laughing and signing and being beautifully, perfectly themselves, Natasha thought about her grandmother Victoria. She wished Victoria could meet Dominic and the children, could see the life she'd built, could know that her words had been prophecy, not just comfort. "The right person won't try to fix you," Victoria had signed so many years ago. "They'll love you as you are." And they had. Oh, they had. In a corner booth of a restaurant, a single father had once stood up for a stranger's dignity. His hands had shaped words in the air. "You deserve better," never knowing he was signing the prologue to a love story that would change hundreds of lives, because that's how real love stories begin, not with grand gestures or perfect circumstances, but with someone choosing kindness when cruelty would be easier, choosing to see worth when others see weakness, choosing to stand up when the world sits down. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, the person who stands up becomes the person you build a life with. The person who teaches you that different isn't deficit, that challenges can become strengths, and that the most beautiful conversations happen in silence. Natasha Reed had walked into Harmony Bistro expecting a pleasant dinner. She'd walked out with the beginning of a family, a purpose, and proof that sometimes the worst night of your life is actually the first page of your greatest chapter. If this story touched your heart even just a little, if you believe that kindness can heal and that love can grow from the most unexpected places, then don't forget to hit that hype button and subscribe to Every Verse Stories for more powerful tales that remind us what truly matters. We share real emotional and inspiring stories that speak to the soul. Your support helps us keep telling the stories that move the world. Subscribe, hit, and stay with us for stories that heal. This is Every Verse Stories. See you in the next one.